In this video I will tell you how all kinds of colors from the Botania fashion work on version 1.16.4. Let's go. By the way, an interesting fact. In the new versions of Botany, flowers that passively generated mana and did not require anything in return, such as a day flower and its night counterpart, were removed. In the beginning, we will look at generating flowers, that is, flowers that produce mana. The first flower is a water hydrangea, which will generate mana by absorbing standing water around itself in a 3x3 area. It also works more efficiently during the rain. The lifetime of this flower is 1 hour of real time, after that it dries up. The next flower is called the endoflame or flame of the edge. It generates mana by burning combustible objects. And, by the way, moxibustion, it returns side items. The next flower is the secret rose. It generates mana by absorbing experience from nearby players. Life is a dandelion. It will be very difficult to explain how it works, but I will try. Imagine that you have a square in the center of which is our flower. We have 12 blocks in each direction to that red border over there. And all this is a field for our game, where we will put cell blocks that will simulate the life of a real living cell. So, you put these blocks and press the restore lever. Yes, this flower needs a reston signal. Then there are two outcomes. These cells begin to divide and tend to get closer to the flower. As soon as they reach it, you get mana. Don't forget that you can't put blocks around the flower in this red zone. And do not forget to turn off the restun signal, otherwise, when you put new blocks, they will not immediately disappear. And those cells that did not have time to reach our dandelion life, they will simply die after a certain number of cycles of transformations. The more permutations, the more mana you get in the end. And the next flower is chewing dew. It produces mana by absorbing foliage from trees. By the way, as soon as she finishes absorbing the foliage, she has a CD minute, that is, you need to wait a little before she starts eating again. Next we have the Araflosi flower, which generates mana by destroying any flowers near you that you have created in the petal apothecary. And another interesting flower is Spectrolysis. He produces mana by the fact that he eats wool, and even a certain one. In order to find out what kind of wool he wants at this very moment, you need to target him with the staff of the forest. The slime mold produces mana by absorbing mucus, but not the one that falls out when the slug is killed, but the one that is produced naturally. Slug chunks. Gourmet. This flower loves to eat in the truest sense of the word. He produces mana by eating food. He eats one particular type of food for a while. If you throw him other food at this time, then you will not get for it. Manu, although he will eat it, as it were. And it's also not worth feeding him the same food all the time, alternate it. Also, the more nutritious the food, the more mana you will get. Entropin. This flower produces mana due to the explosion, absorbing them, thereby not allowing the terrain to be resolved. After the explosion, let the flower give all the mana it has accumulated, otherwise after the explosion of new dynamite, your flower will be destroyed. The heat lily generates mana by absorbing lava in a 3x3 area around it. She consumes one block of lava for 45 seconds, then rests for 5 minutes. The next flower is called Shulk Minutes. He generates mana if Shalkur hits someone with his projectile and imposed a levitation effect on him. The flower should be next to them. But just like that, Shalkur will not attack anyone. It should be used in a pair with this flower, which I will tell you about further in the video. Now I will tell you about functional flowers. They perform some specific action for mana or without consuming it. Let's go. The first flower is a pure daisy. It transforms stone into stone life and wood into tree life. Next, we have a ringing of errors. The ringing of the bell is a flower that requires mana. If you give him mana, he starts killing everything around, not counting the player. Good and bad mobs and neutral ones. The next flower is bergamot. He reduces the volume of mobs by 85% for 4 blocks around him. He doesn't need mana to work. Scary spike. Kills only adult mobs, like sheep, cows, pigs and chickens. It requires mana for its work. Heisei's dream enrages nearby mobs, forcing them to attack each other until death. The tiger's eye is a flower that stops creepers, and it also prevents them from exploding. It doesn't require mana to work. Soaked amaranth. Yes, for a flower, if mana is applied to it, he quickly begins to grow standard botany flowers around him. The color is perfect. This flower, if a large amount of mana is applied to it, begins to turn the nearest blocks of stone into random tools. The Fallen of Canada. This flower, when mana is applied to it, will throw a regeneration effect on you and the nearest players. Exoplan. This flower, when mana is applied to it, improves the efficiency of nearby stoves, making them work faster and they will not require fuel. Agrographics, when applying mana, accelerates the growth of plants in the beds. The Gate. A flower that acts on the principle of a funnel. If you put some inventory next to it, close to the flower, and throw a block next to it, then this flower is across this block and put it in the inventory. And yes, if you place a frame with an item on one of these inventories, then this inventory will be given priority. And if you want to change the settings of the flower itself, take the Staff of the Forest, switch its functional mode and click on the flower. By the way, the flower does not require mana, it only needs mana to increase the area of action. Puta Berry. This flower for mana creates an area around itself from which mobs cannot leave. And Julia's flower, on the contrary, if you give it a little mana, it creates an area that mobs cannot enter. A Wound card. This flower allows you to install blocks that have fallen into the world. First you need to plant the flower itself. Then, under the block on which the flower is installed, you must install a block template. It can be absolutely anything. Now place exactly the same blocks and templates anywhere. And now, if you throw out some block that can be put, it will be installed on top of these template blocks. This flower does not require mana, but mana will increase its scope. Having broken the board under our flower, now you can say air under it, and it's air everywhere. And the blocks began to be installed in a random order. Beautiful. This flower will poison all nearby mobs for mana. Polydesiac. This flower, when mana is applied, creates a romantic mood for the nearest mobs. If there is food nearby that they eat and there are partners, they will not make a baby. Glee Narcissus. For a large amount of mana, he will turn the nearest sand into clay. Tulip consumes a large amount of mana, but in return throws random things and treasures around him. So it was written in a book on botany. But resources will not spawn, and evil aggressive mobs will. Apparently this was done due to the fact that this flower was very cheater. Before version 1.12, everything worked as it should. Stupid Miller. For a small amount of mana, he will blow objects in a certain direction. If you need to change the direction, then take the Staff of the Forest, switch its functional mode and click on the flower. The black particles show which way the miller is blowing stupidly. Lotus Wine. This flower will confuse Endermen. When teleporting, they will appear on it. I've been aggressing them, and now they're trying to kill me. As you can see, when teleporting, they both fall into the same place, to the lotus next to the mana pool. Spectra Tin will lure this flower to teleport objects that you throw away to a certain block to which you are attached. The distance is 12 blocks around the flower. To bind to a block, turn on the binding mode on the Staff of the Forest, click first on the flower, and then on the block to which you want items to be teleported. The Megeman Flower. To lure him, he will cut through the strongest mobs in a radius of 6 blocks around him. Metamorphosis. Tenna Flower Zamanu transforms the nearest blocks of stone into metamorphic blocks from the Botania mod. The type of blocks depends on the biome. The Booba Flower, when mana is applied, will create an area underwater that will be filled with air. It somewhat resembles the principle of operation of a sponge. Connolly. This flower allows you to block the ring of magnetism. I couldn't check it, because for some reason the magnetism ring didn't work stupidly for me. An unusual, not great ring made of terrastale. The fiery ore color turns blocks of hellstone into ores from hell, namely quartz. Requires mana and must be in hell. It was the last flower. You can't imagine how much time I spent on this guide. I hope you liked it and you will rate it with a like or a subscription.